Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we'll be talking about the spell Incendiary Cloud. All right, this is like Pompeii, right?
Yeah, big old sooty, ashen, suffocating, fiery fumes.
Ouch. All right,
Yeah,
that's
not pleasant to stand
that's
in.
not the spell description though. What exactly does the spell do?
All right, this is an 8th level spell that takes an action to cast. It's got 150 foot range. I apologize. With a 20-foot sphere area. It has a concentration component and it lasts a minute. You basically create a swirling cloud of smoke that with white hot embers and a whole bunch of stuff in a big sphere, right? The cloud then spreads around corners and is heavily obscured. It lasts for the full minute unless a wind of 10 miles an hour or greater disperses it, which is not always relevant, but surprisingly will come up more than you'd think. When the cloud appears, each creature in the area makes a dex save, taking 10d8 fire damage on a failed save or half as much on a success. And then a creature that starts its turns or enters it for the first time on a turn repeats the save. So if you cast this on a bunch of creatures that are in an area already, they'll make the save when this cloud appears. And at the start of their turn, even before they can move, they're guaranteed to make it again. So out the gate, that's pretty baller. The cloud then also moves 10 feet directly away from you in the direction of your choice at the start of your turn. So like you can kind of like steer it away, but it doesn't. I don't believe you can ever like move it towards you. Yeah,
Well,
because it
no,
moves 10 feet
it
directly
moves
away from
away
you
from
in
you.
a direction that you choose.
Yeah.
So that little bit is a bit weird, I'm gonna say, but overall, like minimum case scenario we're looking at here is 2 saves with a 28 fire damage on top of each other. And that for an 8th level spell alone is very fine. And then it persists, lasts longer, and you can scoot it into different areas. I say can scoot it. It's probably more likely it's getting scooted out from where you'd want it to be because it's going away from you. So unless you like run around and circle it and like keep it moving in a specific space, it's going to be kind of unwieldy. But for most of the time, you're getting 20 to 30 d8 on a couple creatures. That's a big old damage spell that you're pretty happy to see.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled that it has to move. That's
Yeah, me neither.
makes it a little more difficult to use, but I mean, yeah, if there is like, a massive army outside your castle walls, I guess that's, like a Roomba.
Mm-hmm. It
Uh,
is also a relatively small area by this stage.
yeah.
40-foot diameter isn't enormous. That's fireball range, right? Like that's not. We're getting into the tier where we're looking at spells that have like 60-foot radiuses. We're looking at spells that have big impactful areas. This is definitely a smaller impactful area. It is a very impactful area though, so is probably fine.
What all right, you said we're gonna get back to that 10-foot wind, 10 mile per hour wind. Uh,
Yeah.
you said happens more often than you'd think. Now, are you talking about, wizards casting gust or something, or are you just talking about like
Yes.
DM saying, "Oh, well, there's a breeze. Screw you. No more
So
spell."
okay, when we're at the tier of play that we're looking at here, right? 15th level is the base for 8th level spells. So this is gonna be upper tiers, like intro to upper tiers. This is where environments stop being so much of the crawling dungeon room to room. They stop being the even like the mid-tier hazardous large pillars, the mid-tier hazardous climbing the mountainside. We're starting to get to the kinds of play where like environments are getting very hazardous, getting very varied. Like we're fighting inside of volcanoes that are active. We're fighting on extraplanar palaces that are hurtling through time and space. That is the tier of play that this can be in. And those environments tend to be very noisy via winds and high-speed things occurring around you. On top of that, you'd be surprised at the quantity of minions that are like shamans or other like druidic kinds of creatures. Even a lot of arcanists will just incidentally have gust of wind on them.
Yeah.
And that like butchers this. It just deletes half of it or all of it if it hits any of it, right? So that all of those little use cases whenever attached to a large suite of minions means not just countermeasures can be taken against this, but just sometimes the environments you're in are going to make Incendiary Cloud not work.
Yeah.
I'm actually a fan of this.
10 mile per hour wind is not a lot to ask for.
No.
That's happening probably outside right now.
It's like any kind of rain or storm is producing somewhere close to that.
Yeah.
often more if you're going to like hurricane speeds and stuff, right? I think that this is honestly a net positive for how the spell plays, because a lot of damage spells you can just throw out anywhere. Fireball, you very much like you can make you have to kind of make environments not let fireball work more so than fireball doesn't work in some environments. Incendiary Cloud is very much the inverse of that. Incendiary Cloud is going to have environments where it just flat out is not going to be very good, where creatures won't even end up making the we don't even end up making the secondary save, where you'll cast it, get 10d8 damage, then it'll get dismissed by the wind, and that's probably not where you want to have your 8th level spell slot be. It's still, I think, slightly higher damage. Oh no, it's not higher damage than fireball, not even close. But it's like for the upcast, I should be saying, but it's still like a chunk of damage. Not going to be worth it if there's any kinds of high winds. You're going to want this in enclosed spaces. You're going to want this like to bowling ball down a tight corridor. You're going to want this in environments where there aren't strong winds, which just means as a DM, if you've seen and run a lot of encounters where Incendiary Cloud is like shredding through monsters and you're like, let's take a different challenge here, let's approach it, so you have to use something that is an Incendiary Cloud in your higher level slots, put them in tempests, put them in storms, put them in, it doesn't even have to necessarily be like big rain hurricane stuff. You can put it in again, like an active volcano is going to have a whole lot of pressure and a whole lot of high speed winds happening all around. Those kinds of environments don't necessarily have to be tempestuous, but they can still have big gusts of wind that's going to make it hard for this to work.
Again, 10 miles per hour is not a lot of wind. That's you're in a meadow, there's a breeze,
I'm gonna Google average wind speed real quick just so we can, because it is kind of relevant to how this works. Oh no, you're not kidding. So in Atlanta, Georgia right now, it's going about 9 miles an hour. That's the annual average wind speed in Atlanta, Georgia. Granted, that's very high.
Is it?
Yeah, it's top of the list. Oh no, it's not. Boston, Mass is 12 miles an hour. Chicago, Illinois is 10. Yeah, never mind. It's definitely not unreasonable for just a windy city to have winds that would disperse Incendiary Cloud.
Well, I feel a lot safer now.
Yeah, that. Oh, whew. I was really worried about wizards jumping out of the player's handbook and burning our homes down. Go for it.
I was just gonna say, it's not near the damage of fireball, but it is the same size, and it moves, and it can last multiple rounds. So it's potentially a lot more damage than fireball.
Oh, absolutely. Again, if it's not getting immediately dispersed, this is well over an 8th level fireball damage. Not even close. If you cast on something and then it starts to turn in this, it's taking 20d8 damage and getting roasted. That's way better than a single fireball ever could be. The only time this is worse than fireball is if there are the strong winds. Most of the, I don't know, go as far as saying most, it's going to depend on the table. A lot of the time, this is going to be a very powerful damaging area of effect spell. And I think that the little 10-foot movement constraint attached to the dispersal, you're going to have to think about how you use the spell slightly differently. There'll be some fights where you don't necessarily, you want to cast this proactively, so things have to spend multiple turns in it, because if you cast it like at your melee front line and then it pushes out past them, there's only ever going to be the 20d8 damage there. There's never, those creatures don't have to move or do anything else. They can keep wailing on the paladins and fighters and stuff, and the cloud just goes away from them. That's kind of a bummer. So then you have to consider, like, okay, is an extra 10d8 damage worth it if my paladin's taking 20d8 damage? The answer to that question is usually no. But this is like it's an upside for evokers that can like shape their friends out of it. It's an upside for characters that, like, if you have a tiefling in the party that's like a fighter or barbarian, they're just going to naturally have resistance to the fire damage. So you might say, like, yeah, okay, 10d8 is probably fine, while everything else in the area is taking more like 30d8 damage now. You have some interesting questions to ask. I think that makes the spell more fun to cast, because you're going to have to like engage your brain a little bit more whenever you're going just fire damage spell, go there. You have to be like, well, it's going to move, and how do I interact with it when it moves? How can I make the movement good for me? How can I keep things in the space beyond just the bread and butter ones we talked about before, like Vine Whip, like your own gusts, which you have to place very carefully so as to not dismiss it. Maybe this is you joked about it before. Maybe this is the home for Grasping Vine. Like maybe this is the yoink. I think it's neat. I like that it does enough damage for sure. If you're ever getting 30 or 40 DA damage out of this thing is cracked, and that's very doable. So
maybe, I mean, this whole moving 10 feet away from me thing is keeps nagging at me. Like, I mean, yeah, in a massive crowd of foes, it's going to be awesome. Even if it's not killing anybody, it's going to be damaging a lot of creatures. But in more normal fights, where there's 8, hill giants or something, unless you can get them to like intentionally stay with the incendiary cloud. I don't know. It's difficult to you know maneuver it. You know, it's not like, and it's always away from you. You can't just make it
I
follow them.
Yeah, you're right. I actually think that's a neat little condition of it, is that it is always away from you. It's not in a fixed direction, right? So whenever you cast this, it doesn't just go in a straight line regardless to where you are. If you move, and I'm thinking like bonus action, like you move 30 feet, bonus action Misty Step, get to a position so it's going away from you, you can control it so that it can go back and forth. Now, granted, that might involve you investing more into it, but it is an 8th level spell, so that is doing a good
Yeah.
chunk of damage. So this isn't necessarily a tall order to say like this is something worth investing in, but that is something you can do if you're looking to try and get the most out of it and like that play pattern. There is a neat little trying to figure out how to make the spell as good as you can. It doesn't move
Yeah.
that fast, and you can kind of like skirt around it and try and keep it moving exactly where you want it. Try and just shift the sphere around in a little bit less of a controlled way. This feels like a more of a magical effect to me, as an uncontrollable force of nature that you're just trying to like shape. You're not necessarily having permanent fixed control of. I think a lot of Magic and D&D feels like I make the thing and I point and click and it moves around. I like whenever you have to like do things to make it shift and do things to like adjust trajectory, and this is definitely in that field.
Yeah.
So this is something that I enjoy that minigame a lot, and I like that the spell asks you to do those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's cool. Got anything else to say about it?
It's a big old fire cloud. It does a lot of damage. It's got a lot of little interactive parts that are pretty nifty. This isn't breaking the game in half. This is very easy just to say you've done enough of that. We're putting you in a windier environment. And I think it's pretty cool. I like that it exists. It's not crazy or anything.
Got a rating?
3. This is a perfectly serviceable damage spell in the upper tiers.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on the 3. It's one I want to like, but asks a bit much, and it's all these things you like about it are kind of annoyances to me. Just that it can be so easily dispersed. But yeah, all right, 3 it is. That was Incendiary Cloud. Thank you, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.